Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Lehman. I hope everyone is doing well. You are watching this video because your teacher is not here. So you have virtual Mrs. Lehman to walk you through lesson 8 of our module. So the past few days we've been talking a lot about, what's a positive number, what's a negative number, which is obviously a number to the left of 0 on the number line. We talked about opposites of numbers, right? And if you start with a positive number, the opposite of any positive number is going to be a negative number, and vice versa. So opposite of a negative number is a positive number, and I jokingly say that you kids are wired for that, right? You guys are pretty good with opposites, because you probably like to argue. Just kidding. I mean, if your parents say to do something, I'm sure you always just agree. You never say no. Anyway, least to greatest is something that we are focusing on. And on the number line, when we talk about a number that is less, it is visually displayed to the left. So a good mnemonic device kind of is left is less. So they both begin with L. Any number that falls to the left of another number is indeed less, right? It's also true if a number is to the right, that it is greater. So left is less, to the right is greater. And in this lesson, we're talking a lot about going from least to greatest. So if you're given a set of numbers and you are asked what are these numbers in order from least to greatest, your job is to, sort them out so that you have the lowest number to the highest number, or vice versa. And really, most of this is fairly simple. It's just being careful, being very intentional with it, and making sure that you have the same format so that you can easily compare. And you cannot argue with the fact that reading and being careful in answering questions as far as what is the question asking is a huge portion of success in 6th grade math. If you read carefully and you actually answer what's being asked, you have a way better shot of getting a question right than if you're just, making up your own questions and saying, well, that question's, correct, and it's nothing that was even asked on the paper. So, anyway, one thing I want to talk to you about is the 4th bullet down, negative versus positive. It says any positive number will be greater than any negative number. So, even if you have a minuscule positive number, so let's say you have a penny, so 1/100th of a dollar, $0.01, right? You would have more money than if you owed $100,000, right? Because you're technically, in debt. You have a negative $100,000. So someone with 1 penny has more money, right? So even if a number is tiny, teeny tiny, if it's positive, that's going to be bigger than any negative number you can think of, right? One other thing that we're going to do when we try to put these numbers in order from least to greatest is sometimes you'll be given fractions, sometimes you'll be given decimals, sometimes within the same set of numbers you'll have fractions and decimals. So what you really want to make sure you're doing is you're putting them in the same format. So maybe it's easier for your brain to think of it as, let me turn these decimals into fractions. Or maybe it's easier in your brain to turn any fraction into a decimal by dividing the numerator and denominator and then comparing and putting them in order. Personally, that's my favorite. So you got to really get them in the format to compare. So that's what we're going to work on today. Last night you had an assignment, well, it wasn't last night, it was Friday. You had an assignment that was a problem set on page 25. So if you could please turn to page 25 right now. I'm going to walk you through these examples. Please check yours as I'm going over this and make sure that you are on the right track. If at any point you need clarification, please don't hesitate to pause the video and see if you can work it out, okay? But here we go. So your job in all of these was to order these numbers given from least to greatest. So you want the smallest number, the number that would be furthest left on the number line, to go first, and then the bigger of the two numbers on the right. and then you want to list the opposites of these numbers, and then do the same thing with the opposites. You want to list them from least to greatest. And you should have noticed a pattern as you did this. So least to greatest, so in this case, this is a negative number, 1/2, that is smaller than 1/4. The opposite, so a positive 1/2 would be the opposite of a negative 1/2, right? And a negative 1/4 would be the opposite of a positive 1/4. So now I'm going to look at these two numbers and list them from least to greatest. So negative 1/4 and then 1/2. All right, the next one, we had negative 10 and 2. The lowest one there is obviously negative 10. That is further below 0 than, 2 is not below 0, but negative 10 is lower. One thing that Mrs. Felino gave as advice to my second period class on Friday was think of these in context. We did a lot of practice of people running a mile, or temperatures, or, money or something like that, or test grades, things of that nature. If you want to put these in context of something, it may help you understand which is a lower number. So I'm thinking of 10 degrees below 0 versus 2 degrees above 0, right? So we have negative 10, 2. The opposite of that would be 10 and negative 2. And if we were to list these in order from least to greatest, you'd have negative 2, 10. All right, let's go on to the next one. Again, hopefully so far so good. Give virtual Mrs. Lehman a thumbs up if you're doing well so far. Virtual Mrs. Lehman is looking around. Nice job, kids. Way to go. Okay, let's go over the next example. 0 and 3.5. So, least to greatest, 0 is less than 3.5. Oh, show. The opposite of 0 is 0. The opposite of 3.5 is negative 3.5. Right? The opposites ordered from least to greatest. You should have had negative 3.5 and then 0. All right, the next one, we have negative 5 and negative 5 6/10. So least would be negative 5.6, and negative 5 would be to the right of that, so that is greater than negative 5.6. And the opposite would be the positive versions of these both. And we would, because they are now positive, reverse that order, so to speak. So we have 24.5 and 24. 24 is obviously less than 24.5. The opposites of these are negative 24 and negative 24.5. And we now would say negative 24.5 is less than negative 24. All right? Again, how's everyone doing? So far, so good? Did anyone get tripped up on negative 5 and negative 5 6/10? All right, well, try not to let that happen again if you are one of the people who got tripped up on that one. All right, so we have negative 99 and 9/10 and negative 100. Negative 100 is less than negative 99 and 9/10. And the opposites would be 100 and 99 and 9/10. And least to greatest would be 99 and 9/10. Come on, 100. The next one, we have 5/100ths, negative 500, sorry, compared to negative 5/10. So this one, I think, will be one that if you are going to struggle with any, you probably would have struggled with this one more than the others, because some people don't realize that you can put that 0 on the end. So now it's easier to compare, right? You're looking at 5/100ths compared to 50/100ths, right? So we have the lower one would be negative 50/100ths. And then, so that'd be like saying you owe someone 50 cents compared to owing someone a nickel, right? So you have less money if you owe someone 50 cents than if you owe somebody a nickel, all right? The opposites would be positive 5/10 and positive 5/100ths. And then we would have to, again, because they're now positive, put negative 5/100ths as greater, or I'm sorry, less than, less than 5/10. All right, so we have a negative number and 0. So a negative number is less than 0. We know that, so that was easy. The opposites would be positive 7/10. The opposite of 0, again, is 0. And ordered least to greatest, it would be 0, comma, 0 and 7/10. And then this next one, they threw some more decimals at you to compare. So we have $102, I'm thinking. comparing that to $100, why did I say $102? $100.02 compared to $100.04, right? The opposite of that would be, instead of you having that money, you owing that money. And then you would need to write it like this if we are going from least to greatest. All right, so you would have negative 104 hundredths is less than negative 102 hundredths, right? For each row, what pattern do you notice between the numbers in the second and fourth column? So we are looking at, let me get fancy on y'all. You're going to love this, kids. Who doesn't love a good highlighter? Oh, that's not a highlighter. Come on. This is what I get when I try to do something fancy, like, let's try that again. Highlighter. Okay, you know what? Forget it. Forget it. See if I try that again. Anyway, so what I was going to highlight is we're comparing what's going on here, right? Then we switched it to its opposites, and then we reordered them, right? So when you switch it to its opposites, the opposites of the column, the first column, it like reverses the order, right? So there's lots of ways of wording that. I don't know if I have the most eloquent manner to do so, but hopefully someone in here had something quite beautiful to say about this. So you want something to the effect of, when we changed the numbers to their opposites, their order reversed. All right, I'm going to write that down. When we changed, I'm going to say the original numbers to their opposites, oh, not the numbers, I'm going to say the order kind of reversed. Now, obviously, when you switch it to the opposites, you're comparing totally new numbers, right? But as we saw in examples on Friday, right, if we were plotting, 5 and 7, we know, that, the 7 is to the right of the 5. But if we are talking about negatives, right, the negative 7 is to the left of negative 5. So there you go. All right, let's move on to the next thing, which is pretty much the same thing we worked on. And we're going to have more real-world examples where we are taking integers and other rational numbers, aka otherwise known as fractions and decimals, and putting them in order, either least to greatest or greatest to least, whatever the question tells us to do. So we have in example 1, Sam, who has $10 in the bank. Go Sam. I bet you got that for mowing the yard. Maybe. I don't know. He owes his friend Hank $2.25. He owes his sister $1.75. Consider the three these are national numbers, the three rational numbers related to the story of Sam's money. Write and order them from least to greatest. So if he has, I'm going to write these down. So he has $10, right? He owes his friend $2.25, so that's going to be a decrease to his account, obviously, when he pays him back, because he's going to. He owes his sister $1.75. That's probably questionable, if we're being honest. All right, so anyway, we want to put these in order from least to greatest. So we want the one that's furthest left on the number line, right? So obviously, we need one of the negative numbers. Well, if Sam owes Hank $2.25, he owes him more money than he does his sister. So that is further left on the number line. So negative 2 and 25 hundredths, negative 1 and 75 hundredths, and then 10, right? Lowest to greatest, least to greatest. All right, for each problem, list the rational numbers that relate to each stitch. Then order them from least to greatest and explain. I'm not really big into that. because we talk about this kind of stuff so much, I mean, you could just pretty much say this number is further left on the number line, pretty much every time. We're going to skip that example 2. I'd like to go to question 3. There are 3 pieces of mail in Mrs. Thomas's mailbox. Well, this certainly isn't my mailbox. All right, it says a bill from the phone company for $38.12. First of all, a lot of these bills would be electronically done now, right? You log in, you pay it online. A bill from the electric company for $67.55. Yeah, no, that's not my bill. Mine is much higher. A tax refund check for $25.89. What? People get money back? All right. A bill is money that you owe. This is said, you guys hopefully know this, but you're 12 or 11. You don't have to pay a lot of bills. So, and a tax refund is check that you receive. It's money you receive because you've overpaid your taxes. Anyway, and then you've got to get it back. Anyway, so a bill would decrease your account, right? Assuming you're paying the bill. So negative 38.12 cents. And then electric company would be, I'm going to write it up here, negative 67.55 cents. And then a refund check, that's a positive amount, right? It's $25.89. So we've got to put these in order from least to greatest, as it said up here in the directions. So the lowest number here, the one where she owes the most, is the electric company, right? Yeah, this was the electric company, $67.55. Then the phone company, she owes $38.12, represented with a negative sign. And then the money that she's getting back from Uncle Sam, $25, positive, of course, and 89 cents. All right, so there you go. All right, I just walked to the back of the room to turn the lights back on because the motion sensors didn't think I was doing enough cartwheels in here. All right, let's go to the next page. This question cracks me up. All right, Monica, Jack, and Destiny. Hey, Destiny. Measured their arm lengths for an experiment in science class. All right, this is called the science teacher ran out of good lessons and they decided let's measure our arms, right? Now, why would someone measure their arms? In this case, to compare it to the standard arm length of 22 inches. Why would you do that? Well, let's think about this. We all purchase clothing, right? We all have shirts with long sleeves. You got to make sure when you are a fashion designer that if we know that the average 12-year-old arm is 22 inches, that you are not making 30-inch sleeves, or you're going to have a bunch of goofy-looking kids wandering around with their sleeves flopping around at their sides. I think you should really picture this. If I were there right now, I'd give you a demo. But you know what I mean. You want a kind of a standard sleeve length. So I'm just thinking, where would you actually see that? But anyway, that's kind of a layman side rant. All right, let's go. The listing below shows in inches how each student's arm length compares to 22 inches. So, Monica, no, it says negative 1/8 inch, right? So that means, like Jack, for example, he does not have an arm length that's 1 3/4 inches long. That would be unfortunate for Jack, right? What that means is his is longer, his arm length is longer than the 22-inch standard length. So his arms, for example, would be 23 3/4 inches long. So he's probably walking around showing his wrists an awful lot because his arms are longer than the average kids. All right, anyway, I'm kind of getting on a rant here. So we want to put these in order from least to greatest. So we have two numbers here. One or negative 1/8 and negative 1/2 that are both fractions, right? So we have two options here. We can either find a common denominator to compare them, or, you know, some of you already know, like, that, like, some of you already have a pretty good concept of these fractions, so this probably isn't a big issue for some of you. But let's say they were a little more complex. You want to find a way to make these in the same format so that you can compare them. So I could change my 1/2 here to a negative 4/8, right? That would be okay to do, so that I can compare Destiny to Monica that way. The other option you could do is to do that whole divide the top by the bottom to figure out what, take the top and divide it by the bottom to figure out what the decimal equivalent is. So 1/8 is the same as saying 125 thousandths, and we want that negative, right? So 1/2, we know another way of saying that is negative 0 5/10. So it's easy to compare then, right? So you've got to make sure you set yourself up for success here. All right, so we want the shortest little arms, right? The shortest little arms would be Little Miss Destiny, right? So she is the littlest armed of her friends, Destiny. And that was, hold on, I'll hold my thought, Mrs. Lehman. All right, Destiny, then it would be Monica, and then there's Long Arm Jack. But we're just going to call him Jack. But that's his side nickname, Long Arm. All right, so Destiny, Monica, and Jack. Now, if they want you to put the numbers in order, what a lot of kids will do is they will write down their decimal equivalents or their new fraction or their fancy new common denominator or something like that. Put it in the original numbers you gave, or you were given. So in this case, Destiny, we were told negative 1/2, right? Monica was negative 1/8, and Jack was 1 3/4. I hope that makes sense, because, you know, if you do all this stuff and then you're like, well, these numbers aren't on my list if it were multiple choice, well, you got to go back to the original, okay? Anyway, let's look at this next one. Jason's entering college. Oop. Jason entering college. He's opened a checking account he will use for college expenses. Good luck, buddy. His parents gave him $200 to deposit into the account. Jason wrote a check for $85 to pay for his calculus book, and a check for $25.34 to pay for miscellaneous school supplies. Miscellaneous means just a variety of items. Yeah, why didn't they just give him a debit card? Just saying. Anyway, write the three rational numbers related. Earlier I said national. Write the three rational numbers related to the balance in Jason's checking account in order from greatest to least. So that is different than what we've been doing. We've been doing least to greatest. You've got to pay attention. This one's greatest to least. So again, we're going to talk about, are these negative or positive numbers? So $200 that he was given, that's positive, right? The $85 would be coming out of his account to pay for that calculus book, definitely a necessity. And the $25 in gummy erasers for his art class, and for his pencils, because he's not going to show up to class without a pencil. $25.34 would be negative, because that would also come out of his $200 fancy amount that his parents gave him so graciously. All right, so we want from greatest to least. So we're going to start with 200. Obviously, that's positive. All right, and then, so we're going from right to left on the number line. So we would do 25, 34, negative, of course. And then negative 85 is obviously the most he owes, therefore the lowest number. All right, for each problem, list the rational numbers that relate to each sich in order from greatest to least. Explain how you arrived at the order. I'm all about skipping that right now. Oh, more bills. I'm sick of that. Let's go on to 6. You'll deal with bills your whole life. All right. But just a fun list of numbers, you probably won't. Okay, so we want greatest to least. So, again, we're noticing immediately here right? We've got negative 1/3, 0. I'm writing this a little bigger because that is really difficult to see, all right? That we have 3 different denominators. So we're going to get the same denominator. Or we can change them to decimals. Let's take a vote. Who thinks I should do this video with a common denominator? Okay. Who thinks I should do this with decimals? Okay, well clearly there's a winner here. And I don't really care which it is. I'm going to change them to decimals because I want to. All right. All right, so I'm going to take 1 divided by 3. I'm going to get, annoying. That's what I get for picking on you guys when I'm not even here. All right, so that's going to be negative 0.33 repeating. That would go on and on forever. All right, 0. Negative 1/5. Well, I know 1/5 is 2/10, so negative 0 and 2/10. And 1/8 that we already established was 0.125 or 125 thousandths. So we want to go greatest to least. So obviously a positive number is bigger than any of these negative numbers. And we have 0, which is, you know, the neutral zone. So we're going to go with the greatest one, which let's do this over here so it's not such a mess. 125 thousandths. Oh, but that's not how they listed it, right? But anyway, hold on. 125 thousandths. Then you're going to have 0. Then you're going to have negative 2/10, and then negative 3 repeating. Now, again, these numbers right here do not match those numbers, right? So we need to put these numbers in terms of these guys, okay? So 0 and 125 thousandths was 1/8, right? So we're going to write that down as 1/8. 0 has always been 0. We're good there. Negative 2/10 was written as negative 1/5. So I'm going to write it as its original form, negative 1/5. And negative 3/10 repeating was negative 1/3. Okay? So this is what I mean right here. We went from, you know, what we converted these into. We converted our fractions to decimals. And then we want to, you know, switch it back to what it originally was, so that if it were multiple choice, for example, we would see these numbers not quite circled, but identified in red. All right, let's move on to the next thing. All right, this is your homework. Let me see what we have for time. So this video up until this point has taken 28 minutes. Classes are what, about 40? So this leaves you with like 12 minutes, but between doing attendance and all that stuff, I'm thinking that you could probably get started on this. You are going to list the numbers from greatest to least, all right? And then instead of talking about opposites now, we're going to say farthest right on the number line and farthest left. Let's actually just do a few of these together, and then I'll have the substitute pass out a paper to you for something else for homework, okay? That sounds like a good plan to me. So let's just do a handful of these, all right? Let's just do like these. All right, so ordered from greatest to least. So we want the biggest, the number furthest right on the number line for the greatest, okay? So negative 1 and 75/100ths compared to negative 3 and 25/100ths. Well, if you owe somebody $1.75, you have more money than if you were to owe somebody $3.25, right? So negative 1.75 and then negative 3.25 is the lower number. The one that's furthest right is the greatest number, remember. So furthest right, we did greatest to least, so it's negative 1 and 75/100ths. And the one that's furthest left is the number that's least, right? So above column 3, write greatest, and above column 4, put least, because left is less, right? So negative 3.25 is the number farthest left on the number line. All right, negative 9 and 7/10, and negative 9 is what we're comparing. We want the greatest of the two. Well, I'd rather owe someone $9 than owe somebody $9.70. So negative 9 is more money. It is, you have more money than if you were to owe someone $9.70. The one that's furthest right is the biggest of these two numbers, which would be negative 9. So pretty much you're taking your first number from your list and putting it in column 3, right? And then in column 4, you're going to put the number that is the smallest, the furthest left number on the number line, which would be on your list, the one that came second, okay? All right, greatest to least, obviously 0 doesn't amount to anything, so 4/5 would be the biggest number. 0 is less than that. Furthest right on the number line would be 4/5. And, oops, I'm not putting that right there. And then furthest left on the number line would be a 0. All right, so let's just go through one more because this is pretty easy. All right, greatest to least here. Again, think of it. Are you going to have more money if you owe somebody $70 or if you owe somebody almost $71, right? You're going to have more if you just owe someone $70 than if you owe somebody that much. And then the one that's furthest right on the number line would be negative 70, and the one that's furthest left would be negative 70 and 4/5. So you can obviously see a pattern emerging here as far as when we're taking them from greatest to least. You know, the one that's furthest right is the first number you gave because that's the greatest, and the one that's furthest left is the second number, okay? Anyway, I think you guys get the point, you get the gist of this. At this point, I'm going to ask that the substitute give you an assignment that is called Order. It's page 17 worksheet, and it says order the integers from least to greatest. All right, so I will bring a copy of that up on the board shortly. Please hold while I get that ready for you. And okay, so I have the paper printed to the Smart Notebook. So the next thing I want to quickly say before I show that to you, though, is for homework, what I'd like you to do is on page 30, I want you to order the following from least to greatest. So question number 3, and then number 4 is asking you to do these different numbers from greatest to least, all right? So questions 3 and 4 on page 30, you can go ahead and circle those quickly, and then you will be getting a worksheet that you have to do as well. So you're going to put these rational numbers, which include some fractions and some positive and negative integers, in order, and then you're going to do this page that is called order, and it says order the integers from least to greatest. So this is one set that will go on this line, all right? This is another set that will go on this line, all right? Same with the next batch. You're looking at this as one set that will go in order from greatest to least in that case, and this batch, which will go again from greatest to least here, all right? Then on the next part, it says write the integer that represents each of the following. So a loss of $5 and an increase in altitude of 400 feet. So you're converting those to positive or negative whole numbers. Remember, that's what an integer is. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for being so wonderful. Please spend any time that happens to be remaining on completing that work. And until tomorrow, kids, have a great day. Bye.